Can the Vietnamese language be written using the Thai script? Now, if you've been following my last series this past week in Can the Thai language be written in a Vietnamese-like romanization system, we're going to reverse that. You'll see that now that we've actually made that romanization system so we can write Thai in a Vietnamese style script, romanization script, now we can backwards engineer it and quite easily write Vietnamese in Thai using the same principles, and the results are mind-blowing. Check this out. So here we go. The Chinese numbers, a great equalizer across Asia. Now you'll see the numbers here: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The reason I'm using this is because even though many languages across Asia have their native numeral systems, many will also have Chinese versions of the numbers, and that includes Vietnamese and Thai. So for this first clip where I'm writing Vietnamese in the Thai script, we're going to reverse engineer it into Thai. I want to use something that we have some common ground in, and so I'll use the Chinese numbers. Now, many people, if they think of Chinese, they'll think of Mandarin. So let's hear these numbers in Mandarin. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, all right. They sound like Chinese. They don't sound, however, like Chinese numbers that we have in, say, Japanese, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or say Korean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or in Vietnamese. Now you can see actually many of these listed out here, and you can see these are the Vietnamese here, but I'm going to rewrite them so we can reverse engineer them. Here we have Nhi. Now, as we're looking at this, remember this chart. I'm going to let you start calculating this out in your head. Remember that this nyet, this shak tone here in Vietnamese, is either going to represent, and we can actually come down and see down here, shak tone is either going to be the yin duan, so basically dead or alive. So these are the ru sheng from Chinese. So these are these final endings in T, P, or K. So mot, mak, map. Any of these kinds of sounds, whether it's long or short, these are the ru sheng, and we can see that if they've come from the higher register in the voice, this is what yin is. We have yin and yang. Yin was the higher register of the voice, yang was the lower register of the voice. It would change tone. So basically, the sak tone is either used for this departing tone from Chinese, chu sheng, in the higher register, this yin part of the voice, or if it's dead. Okay, so we have 3 cases where shak is used. So just keep that in mind because we're going to be putting that back into Thai. Likewise, nhi, we can see this nak tone here. It's the dot underneath, and that is used basically in the opposite, in the yang versions of the shak. So basically, the nak tone here is the yang version of the shak tone. These are yin and yang of the same tone. So I'll just continue to write these out here in Vietnamese. We have Vietnamese numbers, which are 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on up to 10, but these are the Chinese numerals. Actually, this should be this letter here. This is an okay? So let me read them to you. This is nhất, nhì, tam, tứ, ngũ, lục, thất. Actually, that doesn't sound right. Yeah, it should be this tone marker here, shak tone. So thất, bát, cưu. Is that the right tone? No. This should be this hoi tone over there. You can see here. And then thập. Let me say it again. Nhất, nhì, tam, tứ, ngũ, lục, thất, bát, cưu, thập. Okay, so these are the numerals. Now, if you speak Cantonese, they would sound very familiar. And so we'll get to that in a moment because we can actually put Cantonese into the Thai script too, or any Chinese. So in Cantonese, it is Yat, Yi, Sam, Se, Luk, Tat, Bat, Gao, Sap. Okay, so they sound very similar. So what I'm going to do now is reverse engineer this back into Thai. So, nyut, well, we know that this is this yor ying, nyut. So what I'm going to do is write that, nyut, and then do, because it's a dead ending. Now, what's happened here, if I just wrote this like this, we know nyoying is a low class, so it would be in the low register, but we have this shak tone here. Now, if this is not making sense to you, go back and watch the other 3 clips that I did, because I stepped through very painstakingly why we're using these tones and this way of writing for each tone in Vietnamese, where they've come from and how they relate to Thai. So if this doesn't look intuitive to you, you need to go back and see, but trust me, it really works. Okay, so we have nyut, but if I wrote this like this without any tone marker, this would be a low class in Thai and it would be dead. So if I have a look at low class in Thai and dead and it's short, what we have here is the nak tone, but this is a shak tone. So what do we do if we want to put this into the high class? Well, we just add the high class aspiration marker. Now that would work. So that would be the shak tone writing this. So we would pronounce it in Thai, nyut. Okay, so the actual pitch contour is different, but it doesn't matter. It's the same tone category. What we're doing is encoding all of the tone information in the writing into the same categories in Thai. And so this ho heap here is basically saying I'm at yin, I'm the higher register as opposed to yang. Now this next one here, nyi, is the opposite. So how do I give a nak tone to it? Well, I don't need to add any ho or anything, but what I do need to do is add a mai ek, this tone marker here in Thai. So this would be nyi. So now the next one, we have tam. So this is a to tao, a, mo, okay? And we can see that this tam is the ping. So it's basically normal, no tone marker in Vietnamese and Chinese is this ping sheng, and it's in the higher register of the voice. So it's an yin. I don't need anything from that because middle class in Thai is included in that already. So we'll leave it like that. The next one we have tư. So the way that we could write this is a to, sala, and what tone marker? So we need a shak tone over a middle class. So how do we do a shak over a middle class? Well, that would be again this chu sheng here. And so the way that we do that is with a mai ek again. Okay. And so this next one here, which would be ha, we have ngu in Vietnamese, so we can actually write that quite easily. Ngo ngu, actually writing ngo ngu, but look at this tone. We have that nga tone in Vietnamese, which we know this is the shang from Chinese. Shang, how do we get a voiced, which is lower part of the voice, to have a shang tone? Well, it's got a mai to here, so this would be the nga with a mai to there. Now, this next one here would be look. So how would we write that? We do a lo, u, go. And this has the nak tone in it. So how do we get a dead? And this is basically, it looks like a low class, a lo ling. So a dead with a nak tone. How do we do that? Short dead with a nak tone. That would be here. Okay, so basically we don't need to add anything to it. Next one here is tut. So the way I would write that. Now I have a shak tone here. And I have a dead. So how do I make a t dead and have the shak tone? What we need is a high class shak. We have a short dead. So this is short dead is a ru sheng, and we need a high class. We actually have a high class to, which is to tung. So I can actually write that there, and I can write an Now there are different ways of pulling this vowel off. I think the easiest way for the moment would be to do this. So basically I can write it like that. Now some people might say no, because it's a little longer, but actually we have numbers like this. And so that would be third, but then I need the shak tone on top of that. So let's see, dead. Well, that automatically puts the shak tone on top of it. So I don't need to write anything else in because it's dead. Now let's have a look at this one. This is bat. So I can write this here, put my, now I could write an a or an a. I'm going to use an a in this case, just because in Vietnamese, this in the north would be a, but in the south would be a. So, all right, maybe I'll put in brackets ba a. So depending which one you want to do, let me just put ba or ba there for a minute. And then we have a do at the end. And what's that tone there? It is a shak tone on a long dead. So here we have a long dead shak tone. So we don't need to put anything in there because that tone is encoded into the letter here because this is a middle class and that is dead. Next one, we have the sound gu. How would we do that? This actually existed in Old Thai, but we can do this. Basically, we need to make up a new letter. Normally, the gu vowel would be, basically, here's your tone marker, that's there. So all I'm doing is changing this into a wu. And so that's probably one of the only tweaks we might have to do to turn the current Thai system into something that accommodates for Vietnamese. So this would be gu. By the way, this is where we get some words like lao in Thai, but we'll get to that in another clip. But so this would be gu. Now, how do we put a hoi over gu? So that is a middle class and we need a rising. So how do we get middle class rising? That is a meitor. Okay, and then finally we have t. So that is a noctone short dead. So in that case, how do I get a noctone under a t sound? A t, well, it would be like this one here. It's a short dead, and in this case, it's a low class. It's the young in this lower register of the voice. So I would use this low class version of a t. So that would be Totahan in Thai. And then I could write this here, t. And basically in doing that, it doesn't need to have any tone marker. Now, these are long vowels, so alternate ways of writing them could be like this. And that would work according to Khmer spelling. We'll get into it again. And the same with this one. So I guess I could write it like this as well. Okay. Without any tone marker. And that would represent this shak tone. So now let's compare it to the Thai Chinese numerals and see how they match up. So we're going to write the number 8. Okay, that's a shortener. This is 8. Now for number 2, yisip for the number 20. So we have this sound yi. We write like this in Thai. Yi, that pen just dropped out there. This is a yaw yak. So yi. Sam. So here we have saw more. Now the numbers go back to normal. So 8 for 1 is ning. Yi for 2, which would normally be song. The word song in Thai comes from this Chinese word shuang, meaning a pair. So this would normally be, I'll just write it here. Maybe that's a interesting piece of trivia. That's where we get the number 2 from in Thai. It still comes from Chinese. Now number 4 would be si. So we have this high class saw e mai ek. Now number 5, ha. So we have ha a mai to. 6 we have ha ga hok. 7 jet. So we have jaw e short e do. 8 we have pa a do bad. 9 we have gao. So this is go out mito. And then finally 10 we have saw e bo. So let's say these numbers in Thai. 8 for 1, yi for 2, ning song becomes 8, like 11, 28, and then yi 20 is 2. So 8, yi 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So these tone contours in Thai would be 8, 20, 3, 4. Notice that's got this mai ek marker on it. 5, 6, it's low. 7, 8, 9, 10. But in Vietnamese, let's have a look at the tone markers. They're going to look quite different. That would be nyet, nhi, tam, tứ, ngũ, or ngũ if it were in the south, lục, thất, bát, gu. This high tone going down there like that, and then thup coming down here. They look quite different, but look at these tone markers. I'm going to use a green here. So nyut nyut this is the same. We have this shak, and we can see in Thai, we actually have the same spelling. We've got turned this into a high class. This is a middle class, but both of them become this dead yin from down here, short. So both of them correspond to this. Even the traditional Thai way of writing the Thai number is basically exactly the same. How about yi? Okay, so here's ni. And we can see actually where this has come from. This is the Sino-Vietnamese, but in Middle Chinese, this was it, which turned into nyet here. So look at this, yi, but we say yi like yisip. So this, you would know from Standard Thai, is also pronounced as yor yak. And then if we use that, it would be identical, yi as Thai. Sam, which has no tone marker, but it's a high class, which means it comes from here. And then look at this. Tam, exactly the same. Si, so this has got this May Ek tone marker on top here from a high class. And this, Tu, exactly the same, May Ek. So when I translate this into the Thai writing system, it is actually spelled almost identically, tone marker wise. Ha, I have a May To on that. And if you have a look, this Nga tone translates into a May To. And so even though in Vietnamese, the number 5 is Ngo, once you put this tone on, this would be Ngo, but it's still the May To. So what's happened? If you have a look at the number 5 here, this was Ngo. Originally, this had an aspiration at the end, which turned into this May To, or the departing tone. This ng has stayed in Vietnamese, but by the time it's turned into Thai, it has aspirated it. So we can see that originally in Thai, this was actually probably a low class, but somebody's used this to write it in. Now, number 6, we have hok. This is another interesting one too, because look, that would be a low class in Thai. This ha would be a high class. What was the original one? Lyuk. So originally it was actually voiced, but this has lost its voicing, turning into ho into Thai, which has obviously come from maybe these Hokkien or Teochew varieties of Chinese. But you can see the actual tone for this one is still, this is the nak tone. Okay, and we can see it in here. And so this is probably the only anomaly here, because this becomes a shak tone. So that would be different. If I wrote this into Vietnamese, that would be a shak tone, but they're both dead. Okay, and now number 7. So here we have third. If I pronounce that according to Thai phonology, or third, here jet, and we can see the actual tone though, shak, and this would be shak as well, because it is a short dead, and short from a middle class. So short dead middle class, we have the shak tone identical to this. This is the shak tone. This is crazy, bad. So we have bad, which also originated from this ba and ba from the same letter. So look how we write it here, bad. And that originally is the shak tone. This is a long dead middle class, and look at that, identical, bad. We say it exactly the same, spell it almost identically, except this has a B, this is a ba, but originally from the same Sanskrit letter, ba. And then we have gao, May To. Here, May To coming from this hoi. Again, gao, gu, if you said it according to Thai phonology, but here it would be gu, because Vietnamese phonology is actually closer to Lao and Northern Thai. And finally, sip. We have here, thup, and so sip is a high class. Actually, here they've used a nak tone, which would put it down here, but here this sip, we use the high class version. So that's another anomaly. If I wrote this into Vietnamese, it would come out as ip, and because it's a high class dead, I would actually have this shak tone. So that's probably the only difference. Now, just as a final thing, let me write what the Isan tones would be. So this et would be et. So look at that. The tone contour actually starts to match here. So yi would actually be yi. And so that's getting closer to the Vietnamese tone here. Sam would be sam. So that's sort of closer to the Thai in this sense. Si would be si. So you can see this starting point of the tone in Isan would be closer to the starting point in Vietnamese. Ha would be ha. And we talked about that in the last clip. but basically the starting point coming closer to here. But this one here, which was creaky voice from the Maitor, goes down in many Thai dialects, but some it goes up. In Vietnamese it goes up. Hawk would be here. So this is, look, hawk. So this is a little different. Det in Thai. Here would be det. So you can see this is almost the same as Vietnamese. From Isan to Vietnamese, it's the same. And so that's this shark tone. Bat would be bat here. So it's similar. Gao would be gao. Coming down here, getting closer to this point in Vietnamese. And then sip would be sip. So again, these kind of similar. But we can see in Isan, the tone contours actually start to get closer to the Vietnamese tone contours. So there you go. We have reversed engineered Vietnamese into the Thai writing system. And you could actually do this for Cantonese or basically any Chinese language, any Chinese dialect. We could actually write it in Thai and encode all of that tone information there using the Thai writing system and get rid of all of these diacritics and know instantly what tone it would be, what tone class it would be. And as far as the pitch contours, well, all you have to do is like we've done in Cracking Thai Fundamentals and in Minecraft, just get a map of how each one of these boxes here maps to a pitch contour, and that's exactly the way we do it in Thai. That's how Thai kids learn to read. You know that if you've got a high, mid, or low class consonant with this tone marker, it's going to make this pitch. That's how people learn tones, using this older system of encoding tones into the writing system. I believe abogidas are the way to go for these monosyllabic tonal languages. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Scan the QR code. I'm Stuart J. Raj. I'll see you on the other side.